upload. I should have done the recording from the beginning. Okay, every single session, including this session, is going to be recorded. Because it's recorded, this is again why you don't have your video or your sound on, because we want to make sure that you're not going to violate your privacy or anything. We will be uploading these recordings to YouTube within about a day or so of each of these sessions taking place. And that means that you'll be able to, if you miss a session or you can't make it, you can catch up on it later. And equally, anyone who's not able to come to the conference, they're on YouTube, so they're visible for everybody. So the Virtual Conference Center, hopefully, many of you have seen it. If you've not been in it yet, we really do encourage you to go and see it, because we put a lot of time and effort into it. We really think this is what's going to make the conference fun. So the Virtual Conference Center has lots of things in it. So you have effectively, you have lots of things in it. So basically you have cafes, games, music, merchandise, etc. Loads of stuff you can go to. If you've seen the merchandise so far, basically it's loads of t-shirts, and we've got some bags and some stickers as well. There's loads more in the conference center than just this, and we do encourage you to basically have an explore. You can even play these pianos if you want to. Now, the Virtual Conference Center is set up to work best in Chromium-based browsers. It does sort of work in Safari, but not very well. And Firefox, we've heard, is a bit slow. So generally try a Chromium-based browser to begin with. Now, one of the things which is in the Virtual Conference Center is the Oracle Cryptic Code Treasure Hunt. Now, this is going to run throughout the conference for all of the 4 weeks. And this is kind of a fun sort of event, which we hope will be kind of like a networking or a group challenge event, where essentially as teams, or if you want to be an individual, it could be an individual, you have to find all of the cryptic clue pieces of treasure which are hidden throughout the entire conference. Now, a new set of treasure is going to be added every single week. So basically we have 5 coins per week that you'll have in. And those 5 coins will be added basically every Monday. We're keeping a leaderboard of who is finding the treasure the quickest, and we'll be promoting that leaderboard every week. And then at the end of the conference, the individual or team who found all 20 coins the fastest will be the person who wins a real prize, and there is a real prize behind this. And we think it should be a good fun competition. There's more information on the Oracle Cryptic Code Treasure Hunt booth in the conference center, or you can find it in the conference information system as well. Now, for posters and networking, we have several poster and networking sessions through the conference, 1 per week. The posters are connected onto the boards, which are at the bottom of the conference hall, and everyone who's in that poster zone, so everyone who's sitting within this sort of light blue square, you can all hear each other. And so hopefully this means you can talk to the poster presenter, or there are some posters where basically you have some posters which are discussion posters where you can talk to each other. So as well as the traditional posters, they're discussion posters and also special posters. So do have a look at them, and we will be having an Oracle Poster Prize for the best poster in the conference, which will be announced at the end of the entire month. Now, the discussion posters, these are posters where you basically can write on a board and have this sort of ongoing discussion that will evolve throughout the entire conference. There are 5 of them, and the topics are Team RSE, how can we build and manage effective RSE teams? Imposter syndrome as an RSE, neither a real researcher nor a qualified software engineer. Does identifying as a research software engineer dead end an academic career? What are good ways to write documentation for research software? And what I would have told my younger self, advice to new RSEs on getting started in the field. So hopefully if you go to those poster boards, have a discussion with other people, write stuff on the board, we'll see this evolving conversation through the 4 weeks. And in the poster sessions, we will be summarizing this and updating them for you. Now, for the presentation and panel sessions, they're all taking place in the lecture theatre. All the questions are with Slido, and so the link is in the chat. Somebody will put it into the chat, or it's also on the conference information system as well, and you'll see it when we get to the question section as well. Now, the way you get into the lecture, the presentation, is you connect to Zoom directly via the ticket, the link that you have there, or you just walk into the lecture theatre and then you press X to start Zoom. So hopefully many of you have done that. Now, feel free to talk to the people virtually sitting next to you before and after the presentations. That's why you come and sit in the lecture theatre. So it's a bit like a real lecture theatre. You all kind of move into the same space, and the act of moving into the room and then moving out of the room And just turning to your neighbor is how you get those conversations and those random interactions that make the conference more than just presentations. So please do network with people after the lectures, after the presentations. Maybe just walk out of the conference, of the lecture theatre, and go into the garden and sit on a bench and enjoy the virtual sunshine and have a virtual coffee. Now for the workshops are not linked from the conference centre, and that's because many of them have an attendance limit. So 6 of the 8 have an attendance limit. Because they have an attendance limit, you will have to register for those workshops at least 48 hours in advance. And you do that by clicking on the workshop on the conference information system, clicking on the link to the form, putting in your email address, the same email address which is for your ticket, and then we'll process that and we'll let you know within about 12 hours if you've been accepted. The page will show basically on your ticket the workshops for which you've been accepted to and those which you're on the waiting list for. And also on your ticket page, within 30 minutes of the start of the workshop, you'll also get the Zoom link as well. And the Zoom link is how you'll connect to the workshop. So you cannot connect to the workshop from the virtual conference center. You can only connect to it from the Zoom link, which is in the conference information system. Now, there are discussion sessions. These are a new addition to the conference. They're like a podcast or a talk radio show. And, these are my favorite things, are the things I'm looking forward to the most. And with each discussion, there's going to be a topic and participants are going to have differing views. We're then talking about that topic and we're hoping it's going to have some interesting kind of like things. And the topics you can see written here: industrial software development practices, Python is ubiquitous, is there a better thing, is testing overkill, and RSE 2031. We think these are nice, contentious, interesting topics. And I think these discussions should be a lot of fun. We also have RSE Worldwide. RSE Worldwide will take place on Wednesday, the 22nd of September. There are 2 sessions, one in the morning from 10 till 12 and one in the afternoon, 2 till 4, if memory serves. And for this, we have RSE associations and representatives from all over the world coming for these 2 sessions to talk about RSE internationally. There's more information on the RSE Worldwide card in the conference information system, but please do come along. It's open to everybody, and it's a good chance to meet up with RSEs from the whole world. As I mentioned, there's merch. I really like the merch, and thank you to the team who put this together. It looks fantastic. The people who've bought it have shown it to me on Slack, and it just looks amazing. I really encourage you to buy this merch, and some of the money goes to the society. So I think nearly £100 at least has already gone to the society from buying this merch. Have a look at it. It's in the shop in the virtual conference center, or the link from the conference information system. Now, the week ahead, every week, we have an extremely full timetable. There is pretty much something happening almost every single day. So we've taken what would normally be presented in parallel sessions in a 3-day conference, and we've stretched it out over the entire month so that almost nothing runs in parallel. And this means you have something pretty much every morning, every afternoon that you could drop into. We think this is going to be an easier thing for people to do virtually. So the idea behind this was that for a virtual conference, if you try and book out 3 days of your time, nobody would be able to take 3 days off work to sit in front of their desk. It just doesn't work. So instead, by just having 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day, we think through the month that most people might be able to fit that in. And we really do encourage you to try and fit some of these sessions in. Now, to help you sort of navigate this timetable, we will be having a short week ahead session every Monday just to talk about what's going to be coming up. And then also on the Fridays, we'll just have a summary about what's happened and also an update on that Oracle Cryptic Code treasure hunt. Use the Today page in the conference information system to see what's happening today, and also use the calendar. It's built into the virtual conference center. So if you look on the calendar link in GatherTown, you will see all of the events that are happening today. So this week, what's happening? Well, we have Monday, we have keynotes, so the Meet the RSE Fellows panel, the SOC RSE Trustee election launch. Tuesday is our first poster and presentation session. Wednesday is the Flame GPU 2 workshop. Please sign up to that as soon as you can if you want to attend, because that does have limited attendance. And then also highlight EPSRC Software for Communities call, the Q&A session. That's in the afternoon. You have to be in that live if you want to ask the questions, but it will be recorded and put on YouTube later for anyone who can't attend. Thursday will be our second presentation session and the first of those discussions, which I'm really looking forward to. And then on Friday, we have another workshop, Design for Change, Software Engineering to the Rescue. Again, please sign up to that. I believe that is also a limited attendance workshop. So finishing this welcome, I just want to thank the conference committee. They have done a fantastic job over the last 4 months, 5 months, putting all of this together. All of your names are there. I will take time to read them out at the end of the conference, but thank you for all of your hard work. And they have done this work but now we're handing this over to you. You are now the conference you're the attendees. It's up to you to create the energy and the enthusiasm and the buzz of the conference. A conference is more than just listening to talks. The talks are fantastic, but a conference is more than just webinars. The value of a conference comes from the interactions, the networking, and the random unplanned encounters that you get when you wander around and you talk to people and you have conversations you never thought you would have, and you meet people you've never met before and you were never planning to meet. You will only have that random buzz, that networking, if you engage with this as a conference. Please take the time to attend the sessions. Please take the time to engage with all the technologies, but especially the virtual conference center. We've really thought about what makes a conference fun and put a lot of effort into creating a conference space that will generate the energy and buzz of an in-person event. But its success will depend on how much you engage with the conference. So treat it like an in-person conference, and we will guarantee you that you will find the experience rewarding. So finally, engage and make SeptembRSE more than a sum of its sessions. And don't just aim to make this the best online conference you've ever been to. Really try and make this the best RSE conference you have ever attended. And with that, I'm going to move over to questions. So I'm going to stop share here. And then I'll basically do the share on this side. There we are. Oh, this is like me trying to do two things at once and hiding with Zoom. There we are. So if there are any questions. Any questions? We have Kim. Will workshops be recorded and posted on YouTube too? Yes, the workshops will be recorded. So it will be up to the workshop presenters to decide when they want to pause their recordings, because for some of them, you might just have people sitting down working on things. But the aim is every single session will be recorded, and definitely all of the interesting and important things from every session will be recorded. So if any other questions coming at this point. Cool. In that case, what I'm going to do is say thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Martin, who's going to chair the next part of this session.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. So as Chris has already mentioned, we've got a busy month ahead and a busy few days this week. And in order to keep us right on time, it's now 10:24. I'm going to hand over to Paul Richmond. Paul's from the University of Sheffield and president of the Research Software Engineering Association, for his inaugural and introductory address to the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. Everyone see my slides? Not Martin, I can see your face, so just give me a nod. Okay, so first question is, yes, I have broken my nose, and no, I'm not as good a mountain biker as I thought I was. Unfortunately, there's not a blur foreground, so I'm afraid you'll just have to put up with seeing it, I'm afraid. So, yeah, welcome to the conference. And what a conference. It's so exciting to have a conference this year. And it's so exciting that it's such a new format as well. So welcome on behalf of the Society. In case you don't know who the Society is, then probably, most of you, I assume, do, and there's quite a lot of you are members, but there's also people here who are not. So the Society is a charitable members organisation. So we're registered as a charity with the Charity Commission. We have a charitable set of aims and objectives. Our mission really is to establish a research environment that recognises the importance of software in research. So we work to increase software skills across everyone in research, and we promote collaboration between researchers and software experts. Importantly, we also support the creation of career pathways for research software engineers. So if you haven't already read our strategy, we have a publicly published strategy on Zenodo. You can have a read up about that. We work in kind of three areas: environment, skills, and people. Importantly, what we do for the community is we provide a number of things. So we provide a conference. So the trustees don't actually put the conference together. We have a working group, which is the conference committee, and what a fantastic job they've done in putting a conference together. But it's kind of tied into the society, and the finances kind of come back in. We're a charity, though. You know, we're not aiming to make money. Any money that's made from our conference goes back into the community, and we kind of dish that back out to you. So we have the events and initiatives policy, and I would encourage people to apply for that. If you have ideas about things you'd like to do that further our kind of charitable aims, then this is how we kind of give back to you. The important thing that we do above everything, though, is that we provide a community and a voice for RSEs. So we support the RSE Leaders Network. We have online platforms. Obviously, many of you are on our Slack space. We have a members benefits program, regional and international RSE support. We have career vacancies and resources, because really the society is there to represent the community, and that is you. So there's a number of important things that I wanted to kind of announce in this kind of intro talk. So just a reminder really about how we work. We are a charitable organisation, and we have trustees who are volunteers. They serve 2-year terms. At each of our AGMs, half of the trustees stand down. So at our AGM this year, 6 people are going to be standing down, plus an additional trustee who is retiring. We've had 6 nominations for our elections this year, which means that we do not need to hold a formal election vote. So things are going to work slightly differently this year in terms of appointing those trustees. We do still need the members to vote at our AGM, but we don't need you to vote on the individual candidates. So the trustees have already approved the candidates that have put themselves forwards, and we would invite our members to approve those to appointment as trustees. And the way that we will do that is through our AGM. We will still be holding the trustees election launch event session. So this is the opportunity for those people who've been nominated to tell you a little bit about themselves. It's really important that you still come along to that and hear about those people and what they want to offer the society. There'll be people that will be kind of working for the community over the, well, assuming that they're kind of voted in, they'll be working towards supporting the community over the next 2 years. So it's really important that you come along and hear what they have to say. So our AGM then, first thing to point out is this is not the announcement for the AGM. We have to formally announce our AGM as part of our constitution. We have to do this and we will announce the agenda. When we announce the AGM, that sets the point at which people have a vote. So if you are a member of the society, when we announce the AGM, which will happen tomorrow, then you will have a vote on various different things at the AGM. If you join between the announcement and the AGM, you will not get a vote. So this is your last chance between now and around about midday tomorrow. If you want to have voting rights at that AGM, then please make sure that you join between now and then. The way that will work then is members who are members at the time of the announcement will be given a token. That token will be used as part of an online Google form so that we can validate that only members can cast votes. The things that we will want you to vote upon at the AGM are confirmation of the trustee appointments, and also we have some important changes to the constitution. So these things require quite a lot of 75% kind of pass rate. We have a minimum number that need to attend for our AGM for that vote to be effective. So it's really important that you do come along to that. So look out for the announcement tomorrow. So there are a number of other sessions that I'd really encourage you to come along to. So obviously the AGM. We also have later this afternoon the meet the EPSRC and STFC RSE fellows. And also hear about the new Open Fellowship Scheme. So the Open Fellowship Scheme really is a fantastic opportunity for our community, and EPSRC are going to be here to answer questions about that, as well as getting some really, really important advice from those fellows about how to prepare and hopefully win fellowships. So please do come along to that. We have the launch event of the UK regional RSE groups. So this is a fantastic example of how special interest groups can be formed as part of the society. So again, come along to that and hear about how regional groups can support our community. There's an RSE landscape event, so understanding role diversity across the community. So this is really so that the society can understand who our community is. Again, you know, the society is the community. It's really important that we understand who you are and make sure that we're representing you. So if you want to be represented, please come along and kind of share your voice. And then the last one that we have on there is introducing the new RSE Society mentoring scheme. So again, the community has really grown through kind of peer support and kind of RSEs helping other RSEs. This will really help to kind of formalize that, and a mentor can be great for your career. So please come along and find out about this kind of flagship scheme that we're launching. So last but not least then, I want to thank the conference committee on behalf of the society, but also on behalf of the membership as well. So society and its membership really is the community, and it's through the conference that our community has the opportunity to kind of grow and develop. So the community really does have a huge debt of gratitude towards all the hard work that the conference committee have done this year. So everything is new. You might not quite realise just how much work has been undertaken behind the scenes, but it's a huge amount. And it really is a fantastic achievement to pull off an event like this in what has been a difficult year for most people, a difficult 18 months, 2 years for people. So in particular, I want to thank Chris and Martin for chairing the conference committee. And thank you once again from our community, and that's everything I've got to say. Back to you, Martin.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Chris. That was you did that in less than 2 minutes minus your allotted time. Well done. I didn't spot the broken nose. I thought you had a pair of fancy spectacles on, but it's not, is it? It's black eyes and a thing across a bit. Bless. Yes, this is what happens. Anyway, great. On to the next part of the morning. Thanks very much for that. And on to the first of our keynote speeches, our keynote addresses. So this is going to be a recorded speech, and Chris is going to press play in just a little while, I hope. So let me tell you a little bit about the talk. So the talk's from Vanessa Sochat. So Vanessa, as some of you may know, is a computer scientist at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and she's been an RSE, research software engineer, for well over a decade. Her background is in biomedical informatics. She got a PhD from Stanford, and many of you might know her from the extensive work that she's done in the open source community, developing container technologies, particularly the work she's done on Singularity, supporting tools, and all the work that she's done fostering open source communities. She's founder of a podcast, the Research Software Engineer Stories podcast, which she also hosts, and she's a very active member of the US Research Software Engineering Association, and you'll have seen her in the UK RSE Slack channels as well. As well as working in the RSE associations, she's very active in the Open Container Initiative, and in her current role, she's studying API compatibility in the context of containers and solvers. And in her free time, Vanessa's got free time after all of that. In her free time, Vanessa likes working on all sorts of fun programming projects, learning new programming languages, running fast, and eating avocados. Okay, so on with that. If you have any questions for this one, because Vanessa isn't here live to answer them, if you can post them back into the Slack, and Vanessa will be able to answer that when she's up and about. Okay, so if you want to press play, Chris, we'll take it from there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Socket. I'm a computer scientist at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and welcome to SeptembRSE. Woo! I'm here today to talk about this idea of the stories that we tell ourselves. So what the heck do I mean anyway? Well, back in September of 2019, I started a podcast called RSE, or Research Software Engineer Stories. And during the last 2 years, and I know what you're thinking, wow, time really flies when you're having fun in a pandemic. I've heard countless stories that people have shared with me of their journey into RSE-dom. And while usually this means going from some point A to some point B, when you listen more closely, you hear something interesting. And so while the research software engineer is telling me the story of getting from point A to point B, if we kind of zoom in on what they're saying and read between the lines a little bit, there's something else. All throughout this process, they're telling themselves these stories. I am different. This is hard. I'm too old. I can't do this. And so as I kept hearing this again and again, I started to ask myself, why do we tell ourselves these stories? And I think it has to do with our environment and the stories that are in our community. So for example, a couple of years ago, when I was just being acquainted with this idea of a research software engineer, a lot of people in positions of power would stand up and they would tell this common story. A research software engineer is someone that exists on the continuum between researcher and programmer. And I kind of looked at that and I was like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But then I looked at myself, I looked at my colleagues around me, and they didn't fit this mold. And the more people that I talked to over time, I realized what a rich and diverse community that we have. And so the problem with the story, other than it being kind of inaccurate, is that if someone hears this story and they don't fit this mold, they scratch their head and they say, I guess I'm not an RSE. And so for Mario, if he's sort of like going along and he's already facing all these sort of inner turmoils about how he can't do this, and then he hears the story that he is possibly not an RSE, well, then he gives up. And so this, if you think about it, is something that we can't even see. Like looking around us now, the people at the presentation today, what about those that aren't here? What about those that are absent because they fell off along the way? And so we can't really go back in time and fix this and save them. But what I think we can do as a community is look really closely at the stories that we're telling ourselves that kind of trickle down into our community, question them, and see if there's some bad ones that we can possibly change. And so, Mario, why are you so hard on yourself? I think there are two reasons. The first is what I already alluded to, this environment. So we're in this environment with cultural expectations and norms, and that influences how we think about not just ourselves, but our place in the community. And of course, that influences our behavior, the decisions that we make, but also sort of how we act. And so if I'm Mario, for example, and I don't believe in myself, I'm not going to act confident, and then people are going to treat me differently than if I had acted confident. And so think of all of the stressors that are already on our shoulders from the get-go of being an RSE. So we come into this role, and most of the time, most of us are worried about funding. Where's the money coming from next? This also makes us worried about our job security. Are we even going to have roles next year? Is this going to be even more of a big deal because we're in a pandemic? And then sense of direction. A lot of us go into our first jobs as RSEs and we're excited, but then we realize that there's no step after that. There's no career progression. And so these are the base worries on top of the fact that we're all remote working and we don't have a lot of human-to-human contact regularly other than these little Zoom videos we talk to each other in. And we're also living through a global pandemic, folks. So Mario, it is okay right now to not be okay. We are together in that. And so the second reason that Mario is so hard on himself is because he doesn't know about self-compassion. So self-compassion is this idea that I encountered as an undergraduate back in around 2007 by psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University. And it's this idea based around when everything goes wrong, how do we treat ourselves? And so for Mario, we know that he was super negative and he's like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not very good. But very ironically, if Peach was going through the same thing and Peach came to Mario, he would say, oh, Peach, it's just a bad day. I believe in you. You can do it. Let's go have a really nice dinner and tomorrow will be a new day and we'll start fresh again. So ironically, we can't apply this to ourselves. And so this is a little hack that I actually started doing in undergrad because I'm one of those people that's just really hard on myself. When you're feeling down on yourself, give yourself advice as if you were talking to a good friend. So look at your friend. What are they going through? What would you tell them? Tell that to yourself. This can be so useful for practicing self-compassion. And so Mario, when he's super down on himself and he can't figure something out, instead of just saying I can't do this, he can pull up this tool belt of all these other things he can say, or like physical things he can try, like going for a walk, having a nice dinner. And so for the rest of this talk, this is kind of the pattern I want to follow. I want to identify a story that we tell ourselves. I then want to kind of ponder, like, why do we tell it in the first place? And then maybe what we can try instead, some kind of hack to like that we can use in this situation. And then finally, what are the implications for our RSE community? So the first story, I'm different. I chose this story to be first because I think it's a very common story that we tell ourselves when we're sort of new into this area. It very naturally leads into I don't belong here. So imagine that you're in a conference room and people are talking about the thing and they are super into the thing. In the first 10 minutes, you're like, okay, yeah, I got it. You know, this thing, it's kind of interesting. I have some ideas too. But then 20 minutes pass and 30 minutes pass and 40 minutes pass and they're still talking about the thing. And oh my God, you get up to an hour and they're still talking about the thing and you look around, you're like, holy heck, why am I here? I am clearly different from these other folks. I just like don't care that much about the thing, but you know, there's this other thing that I think is really cool, these build systems. And holy cow, I'm different. I don't belong. Help. And if you're like me, you probably start singing the Sesame Street song, like one of these things is not like the other, and you feel like this penguin in a sea of, I think actually those are probably baby penguins, but that's beside the point. So why does this happen? I think it happens because we're all on this traditional academic path. So we start in some kind of training program where we're trying to get a master's or a PhD, and then we're presented with like the next steps. And it's like, okay, you can go off into academia and be a postdoc or pursue being a very prestigious, highly honored faculty, or you can go to the dark side and go into industry, make a lot of money, but you're going to the dark side. So like, that's like the bad choice. And so if you're a graduate student and you see these options, you're like, I don't really like either of these options. Like, can I just like, I don't belong here. I'm different. I chose the wrong path. Something went wrong along the way. And so what if we could imagine a future if we continue creating awareness for this role of RSE as we're doing, where there's a third option. So the same student, instead of being like, I am out of here, I don't belong, they're like, no, I am going to be a research software engineer. And so the kind of hack here is that when you're in this kind of situation, to change the expected story at your institution so that you are a part of it. So for this graduate student, they should go out and share their interests, share their passion, say like, I am so passionate about build systems. Here's why they're important. Here's how they fit into this context of research and why we need them to be a fundamental fabric of our research ecosystem. People will listen. And I have a real life story for this, and I'm going to embarrass my colleague. So this is Ian Costan. He is the director of a research software engineering group at Princeton. And I think he graduated in mechanical engineering with a PhD. And he looked around and he realized, oh my goodness, I like the programming thing more than I like the research thing. And oh my goodness, there is not a place for me. So instead of, going off and doing something else, he started to talk to people. And talking to people led to going to Princeton. And over the last couple of years at Princeton, I've watched him like form a group, figure out how to support it, and then like hire a bunch of people. And my goodness, he's still hiring people. And so here's Ian and his group of research software engineers at Princeton. Ian has fundamentally changed the fabric of Princeton research computing in the way that people do research. And that is awesome. Oh, but Vanessa, Ian is a leader. I am not qualified to do that. I am not one of those leader people. I don't have enough life experience. And my response to that would be, well, why not? So I went back and I looked at all these episodes of RSE stories, and all these different projects and initiatives kind of kept popping out. And it occurred to me that all of them at some point were the idea that like one person had that they pursued. And had they told themselves that story, oh, I'm not qualified to do this, none of these things would be a thing right now. And so a different way to think about it, because yes, trying new things, being brave, it takes a lot of courage and that is hard, is just to think of like all the adventures that your idea could take you on. Best case, you like start a new thing that becomes a part of our research ecosystem. Worst case, you like learn something along the way. It's kind of a win-win if you think about it. oh, but Vanessa, why should I put all my time and energy in these things when I'm already overburdened? I am not going to get any credit for it. And I kind of have to agree with you a little bit, because historically RSEs have been like the man behind the curtain doing all the data analysis and all of the processing. And then, you know, who gets all of the credit? Of course, like the lab PI and the students and whatnot. But this is changing. So this is a Journal of Open Source Software, which I hope most of you are familiar with. This is a place we can publish our research software and get a nice DOI. But if you don't really want to write a paper, you can just get your DOI by yourself using, for example, Zenodo. And there are other initiatives that are just focused on saying, hey, look at all the work that these RSEs are doing behind the scenes. Let's recognize them for it. Let's give them credit. But, you know, when you think about it, the way that we're basing this credit, we're looking at the old school academic model where it's papers and citations, and many would argue that's not even the right approach to take. So if we have all these citations and DOIs and they're in some library like this one, is that really going to help us? I would say probably not. So another thing I noticed is that when I looked across all of my RSE Stories guests, a lot of them had these personal blogs. A lot of them were self-promoting their work, their ideas, anything they could write up. I would even go as far to say that people create these personal brands so that someone might find them and really kind of get a sense of who they are and the kind of work that they do. But Mario says he's tired, and I empathize with that. There is so much burden on our shoulders, not just to like do the work, but also to like figure out how to get credit so people see us and we advance in our careers. And it is just super tiring. And so as a community, maybe we can put our heads together and say, okay, what experiences, what initiatives can we do to share our ideas and really work collectively? And hey, how about the conference that you're at right now? This is one of those ideas. So what other kinds of conferences and community blogs and events and t-shirts and holidays and just like fun things can we put together to really create awareness for the RSE role to help support one another and champion our work? And oh, Vanessa, you're saying that's the responsibility of the organizations. That's why they exist. You know, they will have events and I will attend. And okay, sure. You know, I agree to some extent, but I'll remind you that all of these organizations at one point were someone's idea. And behind all of these organizations, there are people. It's all people all the way down, folks. So there's no reason that you, if you have an idea, for example, can't pursue it and help to figure out how to deal with this credit problem. And the advice that I have to give, some might kind of feel like it rubs you the wrong way. This is advice that actually an older graduate student gave me in grad school because I was always kind of looking to ask for permission. And this grad student told me, Vanessa, ask for forgiveness, not permission. And no, this doesn't give you permission to like go out and like do bad things. But if you're someone that's kind of looking to stay on like an expected track and you're worried about doing something wrong, it is incredibly freeing to realize sometimes if you have an idea that you truly believe in, you can just kind of pursue it. So this next story, this is a little farther along in your career, but this is something we tell ourselves, well, if you're like me, every day. I'm confused. And the problem here is that this can very easily lead to like, I'm stupid. And when you kind of think about it, confusion is like inherent in our role. Like we are constantly exposed to new technologies and things. And if we wanted to have a career where we just like showed up and like did the same thing every day, we would not have pursued being research software engineers or just in academia in general. And so the problem, of course, is that it could lead to this. If every day you're telling yourself, oh my gosh, I'm confused, I don't get it, you just feel really crappy about yourself. And you know, I have been here too. And so what I think helps is to realize that there's different kinds of confusion and then different ways to deal with each one. So the first one is like, you know, you see a new programming language and someone asks you like, what does this code do? And you're just like, well, I don't have the knowledge about how that works. I literally have never seen this thing before. So I don't know. So this is the idea of confusion based on knowledge. You just haven't encountered an idea yet. And the fix is like opening up the internet, you know, looking on Wikipedia, that sort of thing. The next one is details. So maybe you're reading through source code and you get to a function and it's not documented anywhere. You can't find it. You don't know what's there because you literally can't see it. So that's the second one. There's just information that you don't have details for, and you fix it by like asking someone maybe to look at the details. And if you can't find the details, you do what humans do, which we're pretty good at, is operating in uncertainty and making decisions under uncertainty. The next one is quantity. So someone gives you like this huge code thing and it's like super complex and you're going through it. You maybe just hit this point where you can't hold it all in your mind at once, like it's too much to process at once. And so here the strategy is just like, okay, I'll start to kind of write down notes or find some strategy that will help me with this. And so I want to point out that these three kinds of confusion are from the programmer's brain, which I referenced in the bottom right. However, I added one more kind of confusion because this is a daily occurrence for me. The fourth one that happens to me a lot is confusion with respect to goals. So when you get a very abstract problem to work on and you like jump at your keyboard and you're like, okay, I'm ready to tackle this thing. And then you're like, what was I supposed to do first? So sometimes maybe you need to go back and have a conversation with someone and really kind of narrow out the details. Sometimes you can just like sit down with yourself and like think it through and come up with like the concrete first step and then go from there. And so just kind of accept, I guess, that confusion is part of your daily work and don't look at it as something about you. Look at it as just like a state that you kind of work out of and you grow from. So the next story that we tell ourselves is, I have to be perfect. I'm only going to share my things on Twitter that look really good, and all the mistakes I made and everything I learned, we got to keep those back there and hide them because nobody wants to know about that. So this happens in teams too. Let's say we have group A and group B. Group A and group B are both working on the really important problems, and they make a lot of mistakes and they learn a lot, but they kind of keep it in their little silo because we haven't telling you one. And then of course, at some point, they eventually come to a solution and hooray, they share it with the world and the world doesn't know about the mistakes. And this happens because of this tendency that we have that we want to look smart. We want to look like we're doing everything right. It is really scary to share the stuff that we want to kind of like shove under the rug. So I think a suggestion here is like, we are going to grow and learn together if we're collaborative. So how can we be leaders and take what we've learned and present it and say like, look, this is what I've learned. I want to set the example that it's okay to share this. And so I think what we kind of want, if you look at what's called a postmortem culture, so this is from Google's book for SREs, where they talk about postmortem culture and learning from failure. I think that we could do something similar for research software engineering to better learn from one another. And I don't know, maybe I would call it like today I learned culture. Postmortem's a little bit of a kind of dark word, I guess. And so the higher level idea here is that we can be drivers of new practices or traditions that we want to become part of our RSE culture. So if you look around you and you see people not sharing or not being collaborative or something like that, we can change that. And just to kind of kick us off, here's just a couple of silly things that I learned in August. Working on a C++ library, and from the get-go, we have been printing raw JSON to the terminal, and later we regret that because we realized we really should use the library. One cool thing I realized is that Singularity Ceph images can be pushed to GitHub packages thanks to the ORS endpoint. And folks, Slurm has a RESTful API. What can we do with that? Alrighty, so now we're sort of getting like to the mid, I don't want to say the end of an RSE's career, but you hit some point where you kind of look around you and you say, oh my God, I am the old person. I'm not 25 anymore. I'm not the young whippersnapper that has all the promise to do the great things. I'm like the person who's like stuck in their role and is like, stop learning and I'm slowing down and I feel like I'm numb. It's really not that bad. And so many of you are probably saying, oh, Vanessa, how can you be saying that? You're still one of these young people. But I must say, I look at the Quaker Oats guy every day, and this man looks younger and younger. I mean, look at his face. There are no wrinkles. I'm pretty sure I used to look at him and think this was like an old man, and I don't think that anymore. And I just need to cite that I did see this on Reddit, and I thought it was hilarious. But in all seriousness, we have this sort of ageism in not just research software engineering, but just in general sort of software engineering and culture, where like all of the good things that happen, you feel like they happen to younger people. And so why does that happen? I think it's because we're always on this trajectory where we go through different stages of schooling and then our first job, and we always have this idea of the next step. And at some point, like that slows down and then it stops, and then we have to kind of create our own structure. And so what helps me is to say, you know what, I think mindset is greater than age, because it is true that you are never too old to get excited about ideas, to get excited about people and share that. You are never too old to come up with a new initiative or goal and to pursue it. And guess what? You're also never too old to just completely do a 180 and try something new, whether that means going from, more of an RSE to more of an RSE manager, or trying working in industry. Like, you can make these choices whenever you like. And so what helps me, I think, is to just prioritize having fun, because I feel like when I'm having fun doing something, people just naturally are drawn to that. And then you don't have time to think about like how old you are. Like, come on, who cares? All right, so this last story is sort of a story that I learned to tell myself. And it is sort of a coping mechanism for the other stories to some respect. And that is, I'm okay. So whether I'm like in the hallway and there's this big dog that's jumping on me and I'm scared, or I have a bad presentation or a bad meeting or just a bad day, I always go to just kind of taking a breath and telling myself I'm okay. And I'm not saying that you should kind of take this on as your own mantra, but I think all of us can have kind of these self-soothing mantras that help us deal with the stressors of life, because guess what? They do not go away. And so as Mario's going along and he's telling himself all these things, he can take a breath and he can also say, I'm okay. And the really great thing about this is when we have these strategies, when we look at the stories of our community and we assess them and we decide if some should be changed or if there should be new stories, we aren't just going to ensure that we, for example, get to our point B and we don't kind of fall off somewhere, but we're also going to be able to kind of support and grow this larger RSE community that we all want. So, younger RSEs, the next generation, Peach and Yoshi, they will have people who have gone through that can give them guidance and can help them with the stories that they start to tell themselves. So here is your call to action for the conference. For those of you that tend to be more quiet, and it's really easy behind the Zoom, you're like eating your peanut butter sandwich in your pajamas and you're like, yeah, this is great. Speak up at least once. If you have something to say, speak up. If you see someone that is trying to be heard and they're not being heard, support them. You might meet someone new, extra points if it's an international person. And finally, find a new piece of software or technique or something to try. Like, there's so many talented, intelligent people here working on cool stuff. Like, there's got to be something cool to try. The homework for you outside of the conference is to ask yourself a lot of questions. So what are the stories that you tell yourself? Are they good? Are they bad? Do you want to change that? And then once you've identified maybe some that you want to change, think about like, what's the underlying cause? And then think, how can I change that story for myself? And then also think about what are the implications for the larger RSE community and how can we work on changing that? And to really put my money where my mouth is, I created this little website, the link's at the top and I'm sure I'll post it somewhere else, called The Stories We Tell Ourselves to go along with the talk. And here is where I've written up some of these stories and a couple more. And I want to invite you to come and contribute your story, like a story that isn't here, or maybe just add to the stories that are already here, include like helpful tips or links. This should be like a collaborative space where we can talk about these stories together that probably a lot of these stories have never been really discussed before. So for example, here's what the I'm different story is. So let's move forward and decide, let's tentatively, not tentatively, let's proactively decide what stories we want the next generation to have and what stories should be definitive for this RSE movement. And let's be intentional, that's the word I was looking for, to choose these stories for our RSE community. So thank you. I am VSock, like V socket or sock on your foot, on TwitHub and GitHub. And please reach out to me in whatever respect manner you think is cool. I want to also thank my employer, LLNL. I think I have to show this slide for that. So everyone, have a fantastic time at this conference. Meet a lot of new people. Listen for those stories, and I look forward to chatting with you later. Bye.
Great, thank you so much, Vanessa. That was a really interesting and exciting talk to start the conference off. Break time, folks. So we've got 5 minutes now to go and have a stretch, a little walk around the garden, go and make a cup of tea, and we will be back at 11:05. And with 11:05, we've got James Heatherington's keynote speech.
Testing, testing. I think that's working. Martin, can you confirm you can hear me over?
That she's about, there we go, recording in progress. In Heather's talk, what she's going to do is report back on some of the ideas that came out of an incubator session at the UseR 2021 conference, which is the main conference of the R community. What's happened since, and how we can take some of these ideas forward for the benefits of both the R and the research software engineering communities. So, Heather, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, that's right. So I'm talking about this incubator that was held at the USAR conference, and which was really motivated by wanting to bring the R and the RSE communities more closely together. So I'm going to start just briefly reviewing where we are with the R and the RSE communities. So as James mentioned in his keynote just now, R is a widely used software for data science, particularly in academia, but it is also quite widely used beyond in industry, government, and so on. The RSE community, on the other hand, is mainly people from computer science and physical sciences, historically, perhaps still now. So in the R community, there's still a lot of R users that aren't very aware of the research software engineering movement. On the other hand, in the RSE community, there's perhaps not much awareness of R and what's going on in the R community. So there's a lot of scope to bring the communities closer together. And as an RSE fellow that's an R user, I'm very interested in working on initiatives to facilitate bringing the communities closer. So I was very happy to get involved with this incubator session at the USAR conference. For those who've never heard of it before, USAR is the main R user conference supported by the R Foundation. It's quite an unusual conference in terms of academia, in the sense that it's normally about 50% people from academia, and then the other are users from other domains, other sectors. But it's a very applied conference, as the name suggests. This year, same as SeptembRSE, it was a virtual conference. And the organising committee introduced the idea of these incubator sessions to give the opportunity for people working in similar fields to connect and work on a common goal or question. That was the aim of the sessions, and the format was sort of left up to those who proposed ideas. So the organisers invited proposals from the general community, and they also asked keynotes if they wanted to have an incubator that sort of went along with their session. And Heidi Seibold was one of the keynotes at USAR this year, and she gave a very nice keynote on research software engineers in academia, telling her story of perhaps a slightly unusual career path as a research software engineer. And I've put a link in the slides to her keynote on YouTube, so you can go and listen to that. Highly recommend it. But anyway, Heidi proposed a keynote, an incubator, focused on research software engineering and the R community to accompany her keynotes. And as one of the conference organisers, I was keen to help support this. So I want to briefly talk about how we planned the session, because I think it's interesting for other people that do sort of community work, conference organisation, and so on, and just so that for everyone you get an idea of how the session worked. So what did we do? Myself and Matt Bennett, two of the conference organisers, joined with Heidi Seibold, and we reached out to several R users that we knew that were research software engineers or doing that type of work in their role. And so picture a team we managed to gather here. I won't name them all now, but included people from Europe, from the US, from South Africa, and from Australia, because the whole conference was trying to be quite global, so we were keen to get perspectives from around the world. And then we had a bit of a pre-session together, thinking about how we would organise it. There was only 1 hour scheduled for the session, so we reckon that gave us about 45 minutes for collaborative work. So there wasn't enough time to sort of propose topics as part of the session, so we decided that as organisers, as this group, we would propose the topics in advance, give participants free choice to pick up whatever topics they were interested in, and then let people join breakout groups associated with that and ask them to return a very brief summary of their discussion. So that was the idea. We also Also thought it'd be nice to invite people from outside the R community. So Anya Brown came and represented the Society of Research Software Engineering, and she gave a short 5-minute introductory talk, which again you can find on YouTube, just introducing the society and the research software engineering movement for those who are completely new to it. And Mario Antonioletti also joined us to represent the Software Sustainability Institute, and he helped in planning and facilitating one of the breakout sessions. Okay, so for the remainder of my talk, I want to share some of the outputs from the session. So the first group was talking about what an RSE who uses R, what do they do? 2 people in the group, Nick Tierney and Anna Cristani, shared their experiences as people who had become RSEs, having started out in research. Others in the group were not in officially RSE roles, but nevertheless they were doing RSE work. And in this group, they sort of identified some common tasks for RSE users using R, and those were data cleaning, automating repetitive tasks such as writing R Markdown templates for analyses, building tools or R packages for analysis, developing documentation, and supporting new users, for example, with support forums or training and so on. They also expanded their discussion a bit to talk about how to get started as an RSE, and their perspective was that you can get started if you have research experience and an interest in software, not necessarily a formal background in software engineering, but you have that desire to improve the research experience. And you can get started if you're already in research, perhaps by teaching software in your research group, or identifying those repetitive or annoying tasks and finding a way to automate them or simplify them for your research group. The second group was then talking about how we can promote RSE career paths, and they thought it was important that we had to work both bottom up from grassroots communities and top down from institutions, funders and journals who have the power to make change. Perhaps those working top down could help to allow for less stiff career paths in science. And in order to sort of have a full career path, there's a need to offer permanent or prestigious positions and group leader positions. And both those working bottom up and top down can help to make the term research software engineering more widely known and to explain what it's all about. They identified that RSE careers depend on academia valuing software. So they also talked about how we can make software a first-class citizen in science. And we can do that by teaching or learning about research software and its importance. Counting software as a valuable research output alongside the traditional publications and so on. And valuing maintenance of software, not just the creation of novel software. Which perhaps brings us a bit onto the third group, who were talking about how we can identify and highlight funders of research software. And they thought that it's not so hard to get funders to provide seed capital to fund the initial development of software, that maintenance is harder. So they spent some time discussing that. And one thing that was important was building networks to become aware of opportunities and how to exploit them. And getting involved in the RSE community is obviously a great way to build that network and become aware of opportunities. You can develop focus functionality of your software through student projects by connecting through master's or PhD programs, or perhaps the Google Summer of Code. You can use a donation button, but that doesn't provide sort of steady funding. And another possibility is to consider dual licensing for commercial and academic use. That in another group, actually, they came up with this list of potential funders, but it made sense to put it in here. And again, use ours as an international conference. So they were trying to think of or identify funders that would accept applications internationally. And they mentioned the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Code for Science and Society, Wellcome Trust, and the Society of Research Software Engineering. They also mentioned Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, who have funded research software engineering projects in recent years. But we were told afterwards that their current program is closing out this year, so it's perhaps not a potential funder in the coming years. The fourth group, we're looking at how we can increase visibility of RSEs in the R community. As I mentioned at the start, many people don't know what an RSE is or identify as an RSE when they could. So the first thing is to start promoting RSE as a discipline and a career or a career in the R community. And this group identified lots of ways to do that, such as sharing relevant talks on social media, inviting RSE speakers, especially our users, to our events, sharing RSE event announcements or listings, participate in mentoring. And it was noted that the RSE Society is launching their mentorship scheme at SeptembRSE. Share RSE jobs, and again, the RSE Society has a vacancies page. And we can also apply for funding to support RSE work or outreach, such as events promoting RSE or seminars and so on. So as well as, so once people know what an RSE is, then they might want to identify as an RSE and help build the community. And again, there's lots of ways we can do that, such as joining your local RSE association or the RSE Slack. But particular to the R community, we could create RSE channels on existing R Slacks. Slack is quite popular in the R community. So for example, R Ladies have a community Slack. Using the RSEng hashtag, along with the sort of common hashtags in the R community like RStats or RStatsES for Spanish R tweets. Writing RSE related blog posts. We saw the importance of blogging in Vanessa's talk earlier. We could possibly create a newsletter for the R and RSE community, and possibly start or contribute to a podcast. And this brings us on to the next group, who were talking about, could we develop a podcast on Meet the R Engineers? First of all, they talked about the idea in general, and there was a bit of a debate about what to cover. You know, should it cover RSE stories, or should it focus more on technical topics and give help, you know, applied help? Should it focus on the research and what the research is trying to do, rather than, or should it focus on, again, the software and, you know, how to do things? They also, although the topic was supposed to be about podcasts, they talked about the benefits of podcasts compared to YouTube. So a podcast can be longer perhaps and less technical, whereas YouTube is quite good for short technical topics because you can give that visual support, and possibly YouTube would have a better reach. Another important thing to consider is how such a podcast might be different from existing efforts in the art community, as there's already a lot of efforts out there on communicating about R and what you can do with R. And in fact, this is sort of where the group ended up, because they were thinking, well, a lot of people are already very busy, and perhaps the best thing would be to collaborate with existing efforts. And some of the efforts that they identified are the Bioconductor Developers Forum, which is a monthly teleconference that covers RSE content. The YR webinars, which is sort of long seminars that are broadcast on YouTube, and the RSE Stories podcast that we heard about earlier in Vanessa's talk. And they thought that the last one, RSE Stories, is perhaps most in line with the original idea for this topic. But of course, all of these are useful ways that that we can promote research software engineering in the R community. Another idea was that the sixth group looked at was writing a book, and what should a book called Research Software Engineering with R contain if such a book were to be written. And I thought the most important thing would be to cover fundamentals that would allow our users to become software engineers. So those that are interested in going into research software engineering. And this might be similar to the recent book that was published, Research Software Engineering with Python. Some of you might have come across this. And important things to cover would be sort of generic tools like Unix, Shell, Git, and so on. Pipeline tools, which could include our specific ones, like the targets package. The development, testing, and deployment of R packages, and also the people skills, thinking like an RSE, how to be a good contributor. But they also had lots more ideas of things that might be better in separate books or could perhaps be in other major sections of a big book. So one would be to talk about the benefits of R-focused research software engineering. But they thought perhaps this would be most effective to contribute our specific perspectives to the Turing Way project. And there are also a big range of advanced topics that would be useful for our using RSEs to know about, such as managing memory, big data, cloud and parallel computing, database connectivity, and data products such as Shiny dashboards or web applications. But this might be perhaps too much for one book and perhaps needs to be split out. The final topic was how do we develop an RSE for our users community? Is there interest in doing that? This group, many of the ideas that they discussed actually overlapped with quite a few of the other groups. They were thinking about it in perhaps a more strategic way, a more coherent plan for developing a community or user group. So the first thing would be to find interested people and set up a core team. But that's perhaps the most difficult thing because people are already very busy. Then make the RSE concept explainable to interesting people, perhaps by writing a manifest that could be put on a website. Identifying cross-cutting topics in the RSE and R communities, such as open science or open data. And then, of course, you could attract people from both communities if you had events or wrote articles and so on. Then invite our users to RSE events and vice versa. And start with user stories. Again, they like the idea of the RSE Stories podcast. So there seems there's some interest and potential there to feature more our users. So what has happened since? Well, the user conference was only in July, so it's only a couple of months since it happened. But one immediate thing that we did was set up an R users channel on the RSE Slack. So that's the place to go if you're an R user that wants to get more involved in research software engineering, or an RSE that wants to know what's going on in the R community. Then do join us on the R users channel. Just over the weekend, we published a blog post reporting back on the incubator. Covers much of what I said, but perhaps in a little bit more detail. I'm giving this talk to report back, and I did have to write the abstracts before the incubator, so it's a little bit like slide karaoke, not quite knowing what I was going to present. But it's great that we had such a good range of discussions and outputs from the incubator to share with you today. And one thing that I discovered just by posting my slides in advance of this talk is there is actually some work in progress on an RSE with R book by the same authors as the RSE with Python book. So there's some potential for collaboration and feedback with the authors there and the people that were in the breakout session at UseR. So that's a nice little connection that we've made already. To summarize then, incubator sessions, we found them they require quite a lot of planning and post-processing by the organisers, because the participants only have a short time to work on the topics themselves. Nevertheless, we found it a fun and productive way to get the community working together. And the RSE incubator in particular at USAR helped to raise awareness of the RSE movement in itself. It gave an opportunity to promote actions that individuals could take, but also to connect collaborators and to provide some space to build on ideas, both in the incubator and now in the Slack space that we set up. And we hope that people will continue to build on these ideas. And if anybody's interested, of course, do reach out during SeptembRSE on the RSE Slack or in Gathertown. I hope to be around so I can chat with anybody that's interested. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Heather. We do have a few questions, if you can take a few questions. So first one is from James Womack. So R is a great language with powerful tooling. There it is. It seems to be used more in certain fields, whereas others prefer Python. How do you think R can reach out to those research fields, those communities?
Well, I don't know that we're sort of trying to compete with Python necessarily. You know, if people are, you know, I think we'd rather people were using Python than Excel, as James was saying before. So I think, you know, if they're doing something, using something sensible, that's the main thing. And I think the important thing is that we learn from each other as communities to sort of share best practice and ideas. So I think, yeah, I suppose it's just perhaps making a little bit more effort to go outside our bubble and to connect across these research fields.
Excellent, thank you. So second question on our slider there from Anonymous. So, do you think the RSE community could do more to reach out and learn from the R community? And as we know, there's all sorts of fantastic work going on there, for example, in the whole tidyverse area.
Yeah, I think there is potential there. It was part of what we hoped we might cover in the incubator, but in the end, the topics that people focused on were a little bit more the other way around, you know, what the R community can learn about the RSE community. But I think there is, you know, some good things that are going on in the R community. One big thing is our Open Sci, which is an organisation that supports the development of our packages for open science. And they, as well as sort of creating a space for people to contribute packages, that they also do a lot to sort of help people develop their research software engineering skills, package review, and that sort of thing, which is very good, you know, for people, researchers becoming research software engineers, you know, to sort of help develop their skills and get support from the wider community. So yes, there are good things going on, and hopefully we'll be doing more to share those things.
And I guess that leads on quite nicely to the third question there as well, which is, do you think there is a lot of awareness or increasing awareness of research software engineering in the R community?
Well, it was interesting that some people who joined the session, the incubator session, I mean, it was only about 30 people, but still, even some of those, you know, hadn't heard of the term before, and were quite excited about it, to learn about it, particularly, you know, in countries where perhaps there isn't a local association yet. So I think, you know, we took some initial steps there in perhaps helping awareness of RSE to spread a bit more globally. So yeah, so I think we've had RSE related speakers at the last 2 USAR conferences. So hopefully that's another thing that's helping to raise awareness. But I think there is still quite a bit that can be done. Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you, Heather. So we are coming towards the end, not quite there yet. We're coming towards the end of our first SeptembRSE morning. not quite there yet. So I think the first thing we should do is say thank you very, very much to this morning's speakers, to Chris, to Paul, to Vanessa, to James, and to Heather for starting off what's looking to be a really, really exciting and fun-filled conference. We are coming back together for sort of formal activities at 2 p.m. this afternoon. So don't forget, we've got the Open Fellowship Scheme panel session, which will be very, very useful, I think, for many of us, and the trustee election launch, which we've heard about already. So that's starting back at 2 o'clock. But now, as is traditional with any conference, it's time for the conference photo. But it's a bit different this time, isn't it, Chris?
Yes, it's going to be quite different this time. So we're going to be taking photos of your avatars. So this is not about trying to take pictures of your bedrooms. So this is going to be interesting for us to try and coordinate. What we would like to do is, if you are in GatherTown with your avatar, when you've disconnected from this Zoom call, I'd like to walk your avatar across to the right into the dance room. So there's a dance room on the right. It's the one with the multicolored floor and music speakers and things. And once you found your spot on the dance floor, I want you to use the Z key. And if you press the Z key and hold it down, you will dance. And we will dance there until basically we've taken some snapshots and some videos. The Gather link, if somebody could post the Gather link into the chat, well, otherwise I'll be hunting for it. But also, if you go onto the Today page of the conference information system and you click on that, you'll get the Gather link. Apologies to those with late tickets who have not been able to get access to Gather yet. We will do our best to make sure you can access Gather at another point. So we're going to disconnect now. We will all walk our avatars across to the right into the dance floor and then basically dance away with the Z key, and we'll take some video and we'll take some photos, and hopefully this will work. And then you can go and enjoy your lunch, but also maybe talk to people. So random person stood next to you, say hello to them, and really try and chat to people in network in GatherTown. So if that's that, good luck. Thank you for this morning, and see you in the dance floor. Bye.
Bye-bye.